Hello and welcome to my channel, and welcome to a Sunday morning meetup in which I discuss my May wrap-up and my rolling TBR for June. But before that, let me tell you about my forthcoming Wednesday interlude video. I plan to shine the spotlight on James Herriot, the Yorkshire vet, as a writer. In that video we will discover some interesting information about James Herriot, so be sure to join me then. Now to my May wrap-up. In May I attempted to read 6 books. The first book I attempted to read was The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas, and I've already discussed this book in a previous video. See the link in the info cards above. The second book I read was Tales of Pirates and Tales of Blue Water by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for my short story project. I spoke about Tales of Pirates in a previous video. See the link in the info cards above. So now to Tales of Blue Water. The first story was called The Striped Chest. The Mary Sinclair had weathered a severe storm, and when it clears, Captain Barclay sees a Brazilian ship that had been severely damaged and was drifting. It appears to have been abandoned, so with a small crew he boards the ship seeking salvage. They come across a murdered sailor lying beside a large striped chest on which is written in Spanish, "The treasure chest of Don Ramirez de Lyra, 1606. And in Spanish and English, "You are earnestly requested upon no account to open this box." Well, that is like a red rag to a bull. They take the chest back to their ship and argue over whether to open it or not. It is not until one of their own sailors is found murdered lying next to the chest that Captain Barclay, the first mate and the carpenter decide to open the chest. And what do you think was discovered inside it? You'll have to read the story to find out. The second story, The Captain of the Polestar, is written in the form of a journal by John McAllister Ray on board the Polestar, a whaling vessel in the North Sea. The captain becomes deranged and the first mate thinks he has seen a spectre on the ice. Then the doctor hears a high-pitched wail of agony in the late evening. To find out what happens next, you'll have to read the story. In story 3, The Fiend of the Cooperage, a private yacht called the Gamecock, owned by a lepidopterist called Captain Meldrum, calls into an island on the west coast of Africa. He finds that there are only 2 white men on the island, a Dr. Severall and another man called Walker. The natives had fled from some unknown terror that has already claimed the lives of 2 native guards who were protecting the cooperage from theft. Dr. Severall plans to keep watch in the cooperage that night, and Captain Meldrum offers to keep him company. Walker has had an attack of fever and is put to bed. Doyle is excellent at creating atmosphere. The tense situation in which the 2 men find themselves, in which their nerves are strung tightly, is only relieved by the coming of dawn. Nothing has happened, or has it? You will need to read the story to find out. The fourth story, Yellen's Voyage, is a story of 2 men employed in an office in Yokohama, Japan. They gamble away their employer's money in playing roulette. Their employer is on his way to inspect the books. They buy a yacht, rob the safe of £5,000 and escape to sail to California. But 7 miles from Yokohama they are becalmed and unable to proceed any farther. Their employer, having discovered his losses, pursues them with a well-armed police cruiser, and just as he catches up to them, you'll have to read the story to find out. The fifth story, J. Habakkuk's Statement, is a cleverly presented account from a survivor of the Marie Celeste, which was found drifting out at sea in 1873, apparently having been mysteriously abandoned. Doyle weaves an ingenious story to provide an answer to the mystery. It is a fantastical and highly imaginative solution, told with all of Doyle's telling and compelling details. What happened was, but you'll have to read the story to find out. The sixth story, The Little Square Box, takes place on board a ship bound to England from America. A man of nervous disposition overhears two conspirators discussing their little square box. He believes they are terrorists who are planning to blow up the ship using the device which they are discussing. At a set time, the men are about to activate the device when he springs between them to prevent them from doing so. But one of the men seizes and holds him, while the other man pulls a string attached to the little square box. And what happens next is... you'll have to read the story to find out. The third and fourth books I attempted to read in May was The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey and The Killer Angels by Michael Shaara for my trial chapter tag Take 2, which was published last Sunday, the 26th of May. So I won't say anything about these two books now, as I've given my reactions to them in that tag video. See the link in the info cards above. The fifth book I attempted to read in May was Schindler's Ark by Thomas Keneally, which was a Booker Prize-winning novel that sold more than any other Booker Prize winner. It was turned into a magnificent film by Steven Spielberg under the title of Schindler's List, and my copy is the film tie-in version. The Irish actor Liam Neeson gave a mesmerising performance as Oskar Schindler, the German industrialist who saved over 1,000 Jews from the gas chambers during the Second World War. The accolades poured out upon this novel by the British newspapers, by Newsweek, by the bookseller, Publishers Weekly, the New York Review of Books, and such luminaries as Graham Greene and Alan Sillitoe would tend to effectually put pay to any adverse criticism and to quiet all dissenting voices. However, we have been given judgment for the purpose of exercising it. I just do not rate Keneally very highly as a writer. This is the second book of his that I have read, and although The Office of Innocence was okay, it was not great, and not one that I wanted to reread or keep. I thought it was competently written and the characters were interesting, but in that book, and especially in Schindler's Ark, Keneally lacks that spark that would ignite a fire in me. Thomas Keneally has a brilliant, ready-made story to tell and a fascinating character to portray, but his plodding prose and matter-of-fact style is less than thrilling. Schindler's Ark is meant to be a fictional account, but Keneally's story is told with all the detail of biography without the narrative power to enliven it. Schindler as a person just doesn't come to life in this book. He's referred to as Herr Schindler, which tends to distance him as a character. Schindler's outstanding charm of personality is not put on display through his actions, but instead we are told that he has charm. This biography, masquerading as a novel, falls between two stools. The narration of facts within a fictional framework is lacking a powerful artistic vision or literary skill of the highest calibre, which means that it is merely humdrum. This story and this character needed the literary skill of an outstanding historical novelist who could bring it to life. It needed someone of the calibre of Jean Plaidy to do it justice. She would have given Schindler the psychological depth that Keneally never attains. By chapter 20 it had become obvious to me that Keneally's failure of imagination in calling two of his characters Dr. D and Dr. B had killed any further interest that I might have in this story. And chapter 21, with its dull, lacklustre prose, was so tiresome as to be excruciating to read any further, so I read 200 pages of 429. That Spielberg was able to see past Keneally's inept attempt at bringing Schindler's story to the world is a tribute to him as a brilliant director, and he made a superb film which increased sales of Keneally's book. I would not have attempted to read this book if it hadn't had been for Spielberg's film and Liam Neeson's excellent performance of this complex and fascinating character. Finally, the sixth book I read in May was Their Finest Hour by Sir Winston Churchill, the second book of Churchill's memoirs of his time as Prime Minister and Minister of Defence in the Second World War. The thing I like about Churchill as a writer is that he is a true literary artist. Although he knows the end from the beginning, he knows, as an imaginative artist, that his writers do not, and so he presents his material as though he did not know the end. His writing has all the immediacy of a thriller writer, and he presents facts and complex material in prose that is subtle, lively and compelling. The forward-looking narrative is involving and fascinating. Churchill writes with intelligence and authority from a position of one who is intimately involved in the events he portrays. He was a mover and shaker, a participant who shaped the history he relates in language that is crisp, sharp and literary without being pretentious. Churchill's skill as a writer and arranger of his material is such that the reader feels immersed in the day-to-day concerns, decisions and actions that he, Churchill, was called upon to make. The narrative is thrilling, fascinating and absorbing. I also read one play, Cymbeline, by William Shakespeare. It had some interesting episodes, was carefully and intricately plotted, but it stretched credulity to the limit. I found it difficult to read for some reason, and therefore not as enjoyable as many of Shakespeare's other plays that I have read. It really needed to be carefully studied and analysed, but I'm not sure it merits such attention. Now to my rolling TBR for June. I have 7 books on my rolling TBR for June, the first 4 of which are carried forward from April. The first book is The Day of the Scorpion by Paul Scott, the second book in the Raj Quartet, which is part of my British Empire project. The second book is The Woman in White by Wilkie as part of my Classics project. The third book is Red Rose of Anjou by Jean Plaidy as part of my Plantagenet series project. This is the 13th book in the Plantagenet series, which I began in January 2018. There are 14 books in the series altogether. The fourth book is The Black Moon. The fifth book in the Poldark saga of 12 books by Winston, which continues my Poldark saga project. Book 5, added to my rolling TBR for June, is the third collection of Doyle's short stories, Tales of Terror and Tales of Mystery. The sixth book is The Glorious Cause by Robert Middlecoff for David Murphy's Read-Along. The seventh is The Prime Minister by Anthony Trollope for Steve's Read-Along. Will I read all 7 of these books in June? Probably not. I will definitely read 5 of them, and 2 will probably roll over to July. In my forthcoming Wednesday interlude video, I plan to shine the spotlight on James Herriot as a writer. This episode contains some fascinating information, so be sure not to miss this exciting episode. So that's all folks, but I'll be back soon with another BookTube video.